My beloved child, stop scrolling for a moment. Do not rush past these words. Something has been waiting quietly beneath the noise of your day, and somehow, you have arrived here at the exact moment when your heart is ready to hear it. What you are about to hear may feel strangely personal, because this story begins with someone who has been carrying a decision in silence, a decision that broke something inside them before they ever found the courage to make it, and before you wonder who this person is, before your mind begins searching through names and memories, simply breathe. There is a reason this message found you now. Somewhere beyond the conversations you have seen, beyond the messages that were never sent, beyond the distance that has made you question everything, a chapter has been closing. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, painfully, almost invisibly. And the person at the center of this story has been standing at the edge of that ending for longer than you realize. They have smiled while hurting. They have acted certain while secretly questioning themselves. They have continued living their ordinary days while carrying an extraordinary conflict inside their heart. And tonight, in this fictional spiritual story, imagine heaven drawing back a curtain just enough for you to see what was hidden behind it, because the heartbreaking decision they made was not as simple as it appeared. There was something they had to leave behind, something familiar, something comfortable, something that once seemed impossible to walk away from. And the strange part is that the moment they finally decided to let it go, your memory appeared in their mind, not because someone told them to think of you, not because they were searching for you. It simply happened. One quiet moment, one unexpected memory, one feeling they could not explain. And suddenly, everything they had been trying to avoid became impossible to ignore. Pause here, my beloved child, because this is where the story changes. They did not end that chapter because they stopped caring. They ended it because they finally understood that continuing it was costing them something they could no longer afford to lose. Their peace, their truth, their future. And perhaps most painfully of all, their chance to become the person they needed to become before they could ever stand beside someone they truly loved. For a long time, they believed they could keep everything exactly as it was. They believed they could remain inside an old situation while secretly holding a new hope in their heart. They believed time would make the conflict disappear. But time did not erase it. Time made it louder. Every quiet evening became another confrontation with their own thoughts. Every familiar place reminded them of what they had outgrown. Every forced smile became heavier, and every time they thought about you, something inside them whispered a question they were terrified to answer. What if I am losing the person I was meant to find because I am too afraid to leave the life I have already outgrown? That question followed them. It followed them when they woke up. It followed them while they worked. It followed them through conversations with people who knew nothing about the storm inside their heart. And eventually, it followed them into the moment when they had to choose. This is the part they desperately want you to understand. Their decision was not made in one dramatic second. It was built from hundreds of small moments. 1,000 silent realizations, countless nights when they stared into the darkness and wondered why their life looked complete from the outside while feeling strangely unfinished within. They had been trying to convince themselves that comfort was the same thing as happiness. They had confused familiarity with destiny. They had mistaken staying for loyalty. But deep inside, they knew something had changed. And once the soul recognizes that something has changed, pretending becomes exhausting. There came a night when they sat alone, perhaps near a window, perhaps in a quiet room, perhaps somewhere ordinary that suddenly felt sacred because of what they were about to decide. They looked at their life. They looked at everything they had built. They remembered the promises they had made. They remembered the expectations placed upon them. They remembered the version of themselves who had once believed this chapter would last forever. And then they thought about you, not necessarily your face first, your feeling, the strange sense of being understood without explaining every wound, the warmth they associated with your presence, the possibility of being completely honest, and that frightened them more than anything, because you represented something they could not control. You represented the unknown. You represented a future they could not guarantee. And yet, strangely, that uncertainty felt more honest than the life they had been forcing themselves to continue. My beloved child, there are moments when a person does not walk away because they have found certainty. They walk away because they have finally accepted that remaining where they are is no longer truthful. That is what happened here, and when they made that decision, it hurt. Do not imagine a cinematic ending where they smiled, walked away, and suddenly felt free. No, they cried, they questioned themselves, they wondered whether they had destroyed something, they wondered whether they had waited too long, they wondered whether you would ever understand why they had done it. And that last question became the deepest wound. Because there is something they wish they could tell you directly. I did not leave because I wanted to forget you. I left because I could not keep pretending that I had forgotten you. Those words have never been spoken in this story, not yet. They remain trapped behind hesitation, pride, fear, and the complicated circumstances surrounding their life, but the feeling behind them has become impossible for them to silence, and now something unusual is happening. The ending they thought would create emptiness is creating space, space for healing, space for truth, space for a different future. Space for the version of themselves that they buried beneath obligations and fear. You may have wondered why things have felt strangely still lately, why answers have not arrived, why certain doors seem to close without explanation, why communication became distant, why the person you cared about appeared to disappear emotionally. Maybe you thought the silence meant the story was over. But in this fictional spiritual message, silence is not always an ending. Sometimes silence is the room where a person finally hears themselves, and this person has been hearing themselves very clearly. They have been realizing that they cannot enter a new chapter while dragging the entire weight of the old one behind them. They have been learning that love is not merely about wanting someone. Sometimes love requires becoming someone capable of loving without fear. That transformation is painful. It asks a person to release identities they have carried for years. It asks them to disappoint people. Stop hiding behind convenient explanations, and it asks them to face the terrifying possibility that the life they carefully constructed may not be the life their heart truly wants. That is why their decision feels heartbreaking. They did not simply close a door, they said goodbye to a version of themselves. And when that door closed, something unexpected happened. They felt your presence more strongly, not physically, not magically, but emotionally. A memory surfaced, a moment between you, perhaps something you said that they pretended not to care about, perhaps a look, perhaps a simple conversation, perhaps something so ordinary that you never imagined it would matter. Yet that small memory became enormous in their mind. They remembered how they felt around you. They remembered the possibility, and for the first time, they allowed themselves to ask the question they had been avoiding: what if this person was never meant to be just a chapter in my life? The question terrified them, because answering it meant admitting that the old life could not remain untouched. And this is where the story becomes deeper. They are not simply trying to reach you, they are trying to reach the version of themselves that can stand before you without pretending. They know they cannot come carrying the same fear. They cannot offer you half a heart while asking for your whole one. They cannot return unchanged, so they have chosen something difficult. They have chosen preparation before reunion, healing before arrival, truth before comfort, and that choice may make the distance feel longer before it becomes shorter. This is why I want you to be patient with the unanswered questions inside this story. Do not mistake every delay for rejection. Do not mistake every quiet moment for abandonment. Do not assume that because you cannot see movement, nothing is happening. Sometimes the greatest movement occurs where no one can see it. A person changes their mind, a person releases resentment, a person finally admits the truth, a person stops running. A person closes a door they were terrified to close. And somewhere inside all of those changes, another door begins to appear. But there is something you do not know yet. The decision they made was only the first half of the story, because after they ended that chapter, they discovered something that shook them even more deeply. They realized that leaving the old life did not automatically make them ready for the new one. Freedom created another question, a much more frightening question. What if the person I want to find no longer wants to be found? That thought has been haunting them. They have imagined reaching toward you and finding nothing. They have imagined that too much time has passed. They have imagined you moving forward. They have imagined you becoming stronger without them. They have imagined that perhaps their hesitation cost them the opportunity they secretly valued most, and that possibility has forced them to confront something they never wanted to admit. They are afraid of losing you, not the fantasy of you, not an idealized version. You, the real you, the person who may have waited, wondered, cried, healed, grown, and eventually learned how to live without needing anyone to complete them. That realization has changed the way they see everything, because once someone understands that the person they care about may continue without them, love stops being an assumption. It becomes a choice, and now they are standing before that choice. They have already ended one chapter, but they have not yet opened the next page. They are holding the pen, their hand is trembling, their heart is beating faster, and there is one sentence they keep writing in their mind but cannot yet bring themselves to say aloud. You may think you know what that sentence is, but you do not, because the truth is even more emotional than I miss you. It is more vulnerable than I love you. It is more frightening than I made a mistake. It is a confession about why they stayed away for so long, a confession about what they believed would happen if they came closer. A confession about the moment they first realized that you were not simply someone they desired, but someone who made them question the entire life they had been living, and that realization came with a cost. They had to choose between protecting the life they knew and pursuing the truth they could no longer deny. They chose the truth, but the story does not end there, because the moment they made that heartbreaking decision, another person became involved, someone from the old chapter. Someone who noticed the change, someone who sensed that something was slipping away, and that person asked a question your soulmate was not prepared to answer, a question that forced everything into the open. A question that nearly caused them to reverse their decision. They stood there in silence, their heart pulling in one direction, their fear pulling in another, and then, for the first time, they said something that could not be taken back. Those words changed the atmosphere completely. Those words ended more than a chapter. They ended an illusion. And my beloved child, you are not ready for what those words were connected to. Because they were not simply about leaving, they were about you. They were about a memory. They were about a promise they never made out loud. And they were about the one truth they have been carrying in secret ever since your paths crossed. Something happened in that conversation that they never expected. A name was mentioned, your name, and the moment they heard it spoken aloud, everything they had been hiding came rushing to the surface. They realized they could no longer pretend. They realized the decision was real. They realized the old chapter had truly ended. And then came the question that made their hearts stop. What are you going to do now? They did not answer immediately. They looked down. They took a breath. And somewhere inside that silence, they made another decision. A decision even more personal than the one before it. A decision that could change the direction of everything that comes next. But that decision has not reached you yet. You are still standing outside the door. You can hear something happening on the other side. You can feel that something has shifted. You may even sense that the story is moving. But the door has not opened. Not yet. Because before they can come toward you, they must face the final fear that has kept them from taking that step. And that fear has nothing to do with the past. It has everything to do with what happens if you look into their eyes and ask the one question they have been dreading. Why did it take you so long? They already know the answer. They have rehearsed it in their mind. They have imagined saying it while alone. They have whispered it into the darkness. But when the moment comes, they may not be able to hide the emotion in their voice. Because the reason is not what you think, and the truth they are carrying is about to explain every silence, every delay, every strange distance, every moment when you thought they had forgotten you. The chapter has ended. The door has closed. The old life is behind them. But the next chapter cannot begin until they finally tell you what happened on the night they chose to walk away. And that night holds the one secret they have never told anyone. Not even themselves. Yet, my beloved child, stop scrolling for just a moment. Do not rush past these words, because there are moments when the heart recognizes something before the mind understands it. What you are about to hear is a fictionalized spiritual message, written as though heaven is speaking directly into the quietest place within you. And tonight, there is something about the person your heart cannot seem to forget that you need to hear. Something has changed, not in the way you might think. There was a decision made behind closed doors, inside a heart that has been carrying more than it ever allowed you to see. A decision that may look painful from the outside. A decision that may even feel like distance, silence, or loss. But the reason behind it is not as simple as it appears. Pause here. Take one slow breath. Because if you have been wondering why this person became quieter, why their energy seemed different, why something between you suddenly felt uncertain, there is another layer to the story, and that layer begins with a truth they have struggled to admit even to themselves. They are tired, not tired of you, tired of fighting themselves, tired of pretending that they can continue living the same way while carrying feelings they have spent so long trying to control. Tired of choosing what feels safe when something inside them keeps asking for what feels real, and that is where the heartbreaking decision began. You may have imagined that their silence meant they stopped caring. You may have wondered whether someone else entered their life, whether they changed their mind, whether the connection you felt was only something you created inside your own heart. But what if the silence was not emptiness? What if it was the sound of someone standing at the edge of a life they no longer recognize? Something happened within them, something quiet, something powerful, and before they could move toward anything new, they realized they had to end something old. Stay with this thought, because this is where the story becomes deeper than you expected. There are chapters people leave because they no longer love them. And there are chapters people leave because staying inside them would require abandoning themselves, your soulmate, in this fictional spiritual